Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Move Crush Count. I'm your host, Scott Joseph. Today's episode is brought to you by J&L Marketing, a digital and direct marketing agency that helps you outsmart your competition so you don't have to outspend them. Do me a favor. I want you to go to their website at jnlmarketing.com. Check out their innovative approach and learn how you can move the crowd, crush your competition, and count the money. Today's episode on Move Crush Count, fantastic guest, Donnie Boivin. He's the CEO and founder of Success Champions and Success Champion Networking. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. He's a community builder. He helps small business owners grow and scale their business. So today he's going to share secrets on succeeding in sales and how to foster business growth with integrity. Welcome to the show, Donnie.
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me on, man. With the short conversation we had prior to, it should be a lot of fun. This should be a lot of fun.
So let me ask you a question, and I'm going to come right out of the gate with
Come on.
this. I love, looking through your profile and talking with you. You like talking about selling without being a grease ball. And I listen, if all the salespeople in our audience, I'm going to get pounded with messages after the fact. Hey, this is such a bad. I think we're naive to think that some of that doesn't exist. And more importantly, it's about perception, right? And so talk to us a little bit. What does selling without being a grease ball mean to you?
Yeah. So if anybody thinks it doesn't exist, just spend any time on LinkedIn and wait for the DMs to come through of all the people doing the piss poor pitching at you and all that pitch slapping. Here's the thing. Nobody ever had the thought process of, I love salespeople. They're amazing people. I just want to be around salespeople all the time, because we've unfortunately in our lives dealt with so many really bad ones. And it's the really bad ones that make sales really tough for the ones that are genuine, authentic, and are really trying to help people. So for me, for years, I didn't think anybody would do business with a country dude that cussed too much, wore ball caps and t-shirts. And it's been an amazing thing that the more I've showed up as me, how much more the world's leaned in. And so I think people in general wear these kind of two masks in the office, or one in the office and one at home. They're person one at work, the person two at home. And that was me. And what happened for me a lot of my journey is eventually clients would meet the country kind of dude of me. And it was almost like I would lose trust, because I was trying to be this corporate, guy that did all the right things, said the right things, talked about the right things. And what we found is the more I let myself show up and lean in, man, more business came in, more people came to the table. So it's not only about just being authentic in nature. It's about being genuine. And if you can help somebody, help them. If you can't help them, be honest with them and get them pointed in the right direction. It's kind of like the Miracle on 34th Street stuff here. If there's somebody that's a better fit for what they do, then man, make that introduction.
You know what? I love that you just opened the show with this, because tons of people out there, they see very successful people on social media. Some are very successful. Some appear to be very successful.
Some want to tell you they're very successful that aren't.
Correct. And I think as I watch a lot of people, I pay attention to people trying to market themselves, sell themselves, brand themselves, because that's what I do, right? That's the industry I'm in. So I just pay attention to that stuff. And so I can always see when someone's trying to make a move and try to establish something either different or grow something. And man, I'll tell you, it is so easy. And so when you said people leaned in when you were being true to who you really were and being authentic, to me, it's so easy to recognize when someone is not being authentic and they're trying to imitate, or they're trying to be. You can just tell when they're not fully comfortable. Like you said, wear a mask. I think that's the best way to say it.
Yep.
How big of a difference? I'd love to know, how big of a difference is it with your mask of corporate versus the way you are
I think
right now?
Some people would try and tell me that there wasn't a whole big difference, but I sure felt the difference. And here's the thing: when you're trying to be somebody you're not, that's when all the greaseball strategies and tactics come out, right? Because let's be honest. I don't care who you are. There's no natural born salesperson here, right? You don't come out being
I'm
born
natural,
just being.
Donnie. No.
I would tell you that you probably have some natural skill sets that lend to help there. You probably, have a strong enough ego. You probably have enough confidence into you, but even those things are learned, based on your environment. And so the more that you can lean in and be you, right? The more time you can buy yourself, especially if you're just starting out a sales role, it's going to take you a year to 18 months to really get your feet underneath you. Right. And so the more you can be yourself and have those fun, real conversations, and the more you figure out how to sell whatever the hell it is you're selling.
The people I like most, I tend to give a lot of shit to. I talk a lot of trash to
I
them.
love it.
I
love
I
it.
kid them. I jab them a little bit, and I expect it. I like it when it comes back to me, right? It doesn't bother me. And so one thing I noticed.
I think that's kind of the
I
MO of most salespeople, though. Let's just all be smart asses and call it a day.
well, I sit here and I remember, because I feel like I might have went through a similar transition to you, right? I can remember earlier in my career, even I'll just take this podcast. When I started this podcast a few years ago, I can tell you, if I look back at the earlier episodes,
I
I'm trying
guarantee
to
it was
be
shit.
all
Yeah.
I'll try to be all professional and this and that.
Same.
Or when I started getting more on video on social media as it relates to business, I thought I had to have this image of whatever. And what I noticed was, the more I just was me, first off, it was much more comfortable. And
Yeah.
I just enjoyed the process a hell of a lot more.
Absolutely. I think everybody kind of goes through that, a little bit. 'Cause for me, as I was trying to put more content out, show up a hell of a lot more, you can definitely go see where I started out. And it was almost in my head, like I felt like I had to already be the guy that was super successful on social media versus just being my damn self. And so what I found is, the more I told the crappy stuff that I was going through, the more I shared where I was fucking it all up, failing, screwing everything up,
Yep.
the more people leaned in. I mean, hell, even early on in the business, I started sharing everything I was screwing up in business because I was looking for advice. And the craziest thing happened is, the more vulnerable I got, the more people started asking me questions. I'm like, wait, don't ask me questions. I don't know what the hell I'm doing at this point. I'm still trying to figure it all out. But that's what people are looking for. They want somebody that, if they meet them on a video, a podcast, or whatever, that if they were to sit down and have a rum with them, that it's the same damn person. Because I don't know about you, but I have met a few couple of celebrities that who they are on the screen, maybe in commercials, whatever, is not the person that you actually get to meet and shake hands with. And it's like a complete Jekyll and Hyde. And for me, I lose a lot of respect in that world, unless there is one caveat to this: they are an extreme introvert. Because I've found that for a lot of introverts, they have to almost become somebody else to be able to get over their own head trash and get out there.
It's so funny you bring this up with the celebrities. We're a couple weeks outside of the Kentucky Derby. So we get all the celebrities coming in town. And I got a funny story. This is years back, and that's probably 10 years ago. Teddy Bruschi, back when he was winning Super Bowls. This is probably 15 years ago. Teddy Bruschi was winning Super Bowls with Tom Brady and the Patriots. He comes into Derby, and I had a bunch of friends come in from Boston, and one was a real big real estate agent up there. So she actually at one point listed Tom's condo and stuff. She had her ins throughout the whole Patriot organization. She networked well. And it was, gosh, it must have been 95 degrees. And our table is in the turf club, which is nice part of the track right there on the finish line.
Nice.
And it's a lot of the celebrities will be in that area. And so the Patriots, Tom would fly all these Patriots in for the Derby every year. And so he's sitting out they're sitting outside, and it's covered, but they're sitting out on the terrace, and it was like 95 degrees. They're sweating. and my table's by the betting windows. And so they come in, and I use the restroom. I come back, and I notice Teddy Bruschi is sitting at our table. And so this will go to the authentic,
Right.
and the celebrity thing. And he's sitting there, and I have fun. These are sports guys. I feel like they all have similar personalities, and you probably have a few cocktails in you, so you get a little braver. So I come up to the table, and I pretend I don't know him, and I say to the girl, I said, "Who in the shit is letting this guy sit at our table?" And I do not break character. I keep a straight face, and he looks at me shocked, and then he finally starts laughing. We laughed, and good time. A couple of days go on. So a year later, this guy is a phenomenal guy. So a year later, I'm horrible with names. We're at the Playboy party, which was, I think, on the Thursday night before the Oaks, and in come the Patriots. We're leaving. Me and my wife are leaving, and we're about 20 feet away, and in come the Patriots, and there's Teddy, and I start hollering, "Hey, Teddy!" And my wife's all embarrassed. Stop. He's not going to remember you. Quit it. This is embarrassing. He looks over, and this is after only a 10, 15-minute conversation the year before. And I kid you not, he goes, "Scott, Trish came over, talked to us for 30
That's
minutes,
amazing.
ended up hanging up." I was blown away by that. But it goes back to what you're saying. I think the more authentic we are, and just be you. And if people don't like you, they don't like you. It doesn't mean you have to be an ass, or it's not trying to win people over. Just, you want to attract the people that come naturally, not forced. And so, but you brought up the celebrities, and he's true to him. Well, he's one that's true to who he. What you see on camera is what you get in real life with him. He's an incredible guy.
Well, and that's the whole point of it all. I mean, I hope I can stay that humble the bigger my brand and continues to go, because I do have a legitimate fear that it's going to go to my head, because I'm good if I'm on stages, like in front of a crowd, right? I'm really good there. Put me on 2-3 people, and that's where world gets awkward for me. If somebody else is not being the smart ass that allows my smart ass side to come out, I struggle in those really small group conversations. And I don't ever want people to come across and think that I'm just a rude asshole in those moments. It's just, small talk for me has never been something that I've enjoyed doing. Now, I love practical jokes. I love smart assery and those type of things. So usually my icebreaker is to make fun of my own self. And that's how I'll get the conversations, rolling, to see what kind of personalities we're dealing with. So, but yeah, it's my wife manages a veterinary clinic that gets all the Dallas Cowboys, all the Texas Rangers in. Most of the players, she'll tell you, are amazing. It's the wives of the players that, do you know who I am? Wearing a ring the size of their Chihuahua, but she's got some pretty interesting stories about people coming through the clinic. But what most people need to think about is, if you're trying to put out content, social media and the likes, there's people that are following you. Part of your responsibility is to show them the right way to freaking act, and how to show up in life, and how to be authentic in their world. Don't be a jackass about it.
Good point. You talk a lot about leveraging sales and business development to help a business scale up. A lot of people have different definitions of that word leverage. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you mean with that?
So let's define sales, and let's define, business development. For me, sales is the final yes/no conversation, right? That's sales. Everything else is business development, and that's what leads up to that final sales. What most people don't actually have, they don't actually have any sort of sales problem. What they have is they have a business development problem. They don't want to do the shit that'll actually grow their business. They don't want to do the reach outs. They don't want to do the cold calls. They don't want to do the networking and all the things that you need to do to be able to get to that final table and have that conversation with people. They just want to be able to sit at the conversation, that final table, just expecting the world to just show up for them. So for me, there's 3 major business development activities. there is your cold outreach, right? So that could be your cold calling, cold DMing, that could be, door to door, whatever, anywhere you go straight cold. The second one I call hand raising. This is where you can put out original thoughts and people will raise their hand and say, hey, I'm interested, want to know more. So this could be social media, commenting on social media. This could be getting on stages, podcasts, could be putting out books, just some way you can get your message out to the masses. And then the final one of that is, so you got hand raising, you got cold outreach, excuse me. And then the final one of that is, you've got to be building out your overall personal brand. And what people don't understand is that what you say you do is more advertising and marketing. What everybody else says you do is branding. So it's with the stories that people say when you're not in the room that really matter.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're not showing up and putting out this original thought content, if you're not doing the cold outreach, if you're not doing the things to get seen, then you're really missing out on a big opportunity. The leverage comes by the ability to get in those conversations. So if you have a big social media following, that helps, because now that becomes part of your sales team. If you, are doing consistent business development activities, that becomes your leverage because sales then becomes math, right? It comes down to if I do enough of the X, I will get X and then I can get X. So if I do enough cold outreach, it's going to get me this many conversations started. This many conversations get me to this many sales calls. This many sales calls gets me to my numbers.
That's right. So what do you think in terms of entrepreneurs? What are some of the most common mistakes they make as it relates to sales?
Yeah, they stay the same person they were before they started a business. And so what I mean is, man, I spent 20 years working for other people and straight commission sales the entire run. At that point in my life, I would have told you that nobody ever told me what to do. I set my own schedules, I outworked people and the likes. Those straight commission sales, you eat what you kill. I can tell you that once I became a business owner, I had two rough awakenings. One, I had to realize that my entire life was spent doing what other people asked me to do. They gave me quotas, they gave me things to hit, numbers to do, and the like, and I had to get there. The second thing is I had no idea how to be a business owner. I was an employee. I had to shift from that employee thinking. Employee thinks I've got to get it done at all cost. Right? I have got to get it done at all costs. A CEO never thinks an I got to get it done. It's who can get this done for me. And so the biggest thing that they're screwing up is they stay in that employee mindset versus a business owner mindset. And they actually create a really shitty job and not a company for themselves.
Yeah. I can remember when I first started in business. You're 100% right. I stayed involved for a very long time. And finally, elements of it I started giving up, and lo and behold, that's when the real growth will start coming, when you can start working on your business instead of in it. But I do, the one benefit I had about not knowing anything is all that employee stuff that I hated and or liked from my job. I made sure to improve on the things I liked and try to eliminate the things I hated as an employee when I first started. And then what happens is, right, you don't know what you're doing. You start scaling, and all of a sudden that pay plan that was one page
adds up real damn quick.
Yeah, it ends up being about 20 pages because all Band-Aids that you're putting on it, and then you heck, no one understands this pay plan. We got to simplify again. But the struggles and the growth pains of scaling. You have Success Champion Networking. Talk to us a little bit about that. And then what I'm really wanting to discuss is with you is the importance of building relationships and networking and what it's done for you and others.
Yeah, for sure. So let's be honest. Networking hasn't evolved since the 80s. They came out, whether you're going to events, whether you're going into networking groups and the likes, it's all the same crap. And it doesn't necessarily work in the environment we're in. So we set out to change how the world networks, and we did it. So we built these mastermind peer groups that actually happen to have a networking problem, and became the fastest growing networking organization on the planet. And we're having a lot of fun, continue to impact and change. And we're getting ready. I can't talk about it yet, but we're getting ready to launch another variable of this that's going to be freaking absolutely game changing that we're stoked about. And so for me, I just want to bring legitimate business owners together that understand that power of having the right circle, right people around you. And dude, if everybody is growing and going, like the people you surround yourself with should push the shit out of you. They should challenge you. Like when you get into this circle of people, you got to be able to get into that group going, holy shit, I got to up my game to keep up or keep ahead of these people. And so that's the environment we created. And what most people do, they do what we call safe networking. And safe networking is your social clubs. They're only hanging out in places where they already know people. They're only, doing things where they're around the people that are safe, they can have conversations with. They're not shocking the system by finding themselves in different rooms with people that can drive and push them. And that's what limits most of their abilities.
So I've been doing for the last 2 years leadership retreats over my shoulder here. You see that business, bourbon, and cigars. And so I'm spinning that off. I'm starting it as its own company. And first off, I did not start that as a networking and relationship building mastermind group. I started it as a true mastermind group. And what we did was, it happened. I'm not going to go into the whole story with it, but when we did it in the middle of COVID. We only had the first event had like 13 people. Everybody was social distancing and masking up and constantly wiping.
Kind of hard to smoke a cigar through a mask. I'm just saying.
Well, by the end, everybody was mask off and everybody's hugging each other.
Right.
But what I was shocked, what we just wanted to set up an event that was different than everybody else. So we did true mastermind breakouts. This wasn't people speaking and like you said, these same old tired, common type of events. What I was shocked, and I say this, I feel like I'm starting to say this on every show. The biggest regret I had over my first 20 years in business was not focusing on the networking and the relationship. And I want to keep going with this because as I started doing this, what quickly became obvious, listen, the solutions we came up and the breakthroughs and all that type of stuff during the business part was all outstanding. But the real benefit has been, to your point, was the relationships that have formed. I've got better relationships from people I have never met in my life until 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're some of the strongest relationships I've ever had because we're going through battles together. We're coming up with ideas together. We're working towards a common mission, which is growth. We're all trying to improve, whether it's ourselves or our business. And to me, if you're a new entrepreneur, right, or someone really trying to take it to the next level, to me, it's the easiest path.
Oh, absolutely. Here's the thing: the world you got to get into, and the mindset you got to get into, is you got to get away from this broke ass mindset. So when people think about networking, they instantly go to referrals, and it's the dumbest move on the planet. And here's why. If you go into networking and all you're looking at is that you need to get referrals, everybody knows you're broke and desperate, right? Yeah. The power of networking is to be able to get those relationships and be able to get introduced to the right people in the right rooms at the right times, because the people who get it, that are actually growing these monster businesses and putting these things together, man, it's all about that Rolodex. Like it has does not matter who you are, does not matter who you know. It's 100% who will bring your name up in the right conversations. And dude, when you are collaborating, like you're talking about, you're going to battle together, you're working on project together, you're coming up with things, you get such a cool bond because two things happen. One, you both realize, shit, we're both dealing with this, right?
Yeah.
We're both in the field of battle, and that forms a brotherhood. Doesn't matter if you're a guy or girl, it just forms a cool brotherhood, right? And then, as you continue to move forward, there's a new level of respect that happens because you're like, dude, that guy's been through it, right? That guy's been through the shit and he's
Yeah.
still fighting through. That's my guy right there. And then when you can put the icing on the cake and go, hey, Scott, I just heard about XYZ coming up, man. They're looking for a guy like you. Let me make that introduction and help you get in there. That's how all business really happens in this day and age. It's like people who only use a resume to get a job. The real jobs aren't done with resumes. They're done through introductions. They're done through backroom conversations and these backroom deals. And the only way to get into those rooms is you got to be the guy that deserves to be in the damn room, right?
Yeah.
If you're not getting after it, then you're never going to get in that room.
I was fortunate when I started out. I understand. I knew I knew nothing. At least I knew what I didn't know to this level. I knew I didn't know how to run a business, but I knew I could sell my way through that and learn the rest. The problem when you have that mindset is, to your point, your selling mode. It's about getting referrals. It's about making the calls. You're so into that lane and you've got blinders on. God, everything could have just escalated and happened so much faster for me if I was more about people and helping people and giving and like you said, I get it. Listen, what moves me today is not what moved me back then. My why is different today than it was, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, 30 years ago. I get a charge when, like you had said, making introductions.
Mm-hmm.
When I can introduce this guy to you and I see a synergy there and I know that this is going to help vault both of you like that.
Yep.
That charges me up.
Yep. And it's amazing to me the number of people that don't get that vibe. And the only thing I can relate it to is I think when you're in such a desperate mindset. So here's another way of looking at networking as a whole. If you can't sell, networking is going to suck for you, right? If you can't go find and drum up your own business, networking is going to suck for you because you're going to rely 100% on the network to build your business. That's like taking your business, your job, and putting it into somebody else's freaking hands, right? It's the most, like, if somebody tells me that their business is 100% referral-based business, I know they're in for a rough road for the rest of their journey because you just can't build business that way, right? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I say for me, it's the idea that if you can go sell and find your own business and bring that business back to your circle, to your network, and you got a group of people that can do that, you know how fast those businesses grow because everybody's out getting after it and bringing those relationships back. It's the best way to run.
So one of the things that for me, sales was, I studied it and I feel like I was good at it, but I had to force myself to do it because especially early in my life or early in my career, I was really kind of a shyer person. I don't want to say introvert, but if I didn't, once I got to know you, I was definitely not shy.
Right.
But early on, I wasn't real comfortable in those settings. And so I think subconsciously I would avoid or thinking that networking and relationship building, I didn't need it or it wasn't that important. This over here was more important. What do you say to the people? What are some techniques that you can help people so they can network and build relationships better?
Give a shit about other people. I mean, that's the number one thing, because what happens is, let's be honest, networking as we know it for the most part was created by a bunch of broke people. Okay. Broke people that couldn't sell. So they had to find ways to get themselves in rooms where hopefully other people could make introductions for them. So the whole thing here is you've got to put yourself in the repetition to learn how to have the conversations, how to say the things, because I've tried to sit down and figure out how many sales calls I've actually done over 22 years of selling. And I know it's well over 1,000, but I don't know an exact number, but I've actually spent some time going and sitting, trying to count up all the new clients I've brought on over the years, going through old records. Cause I'm just really curious because I want people to understand that talent and skill level I have in selling right now doesn't come because I had some natural skill set. It becomes from doing 1,000 different freaking conversations and finding myself in these conversations where you know where the conversation is likely to go before it happens. And so,
Yeah.
so for people, if you don't like networking, getting out, meet people, you just haven't put yourself in enough of the right rooms. You haven't put yourself in enough of the right conversations. And unfortunately, you got to find yourself in so many shitty rooms to understand where the good rooms are. So you can
Yeah.
quickly evaluate and get in and out of that situation. And people don't want to put in the time. They don't want to put in that effort because that's where the real work is.
Let's get back to sales real quick.
Cool.
Share some tips. How do you approach, you bring up the grease ball thing. So let's talk about, all right, I want to approach a potential client. I don't want to come across as pushy, too aggressive.
Yep.
And for all you people watching on LinkedIn, I think this also will apply to you as soon as you make a connection. Please don't spam our inboxes with about 10 paragraph sales message.
Yes.
That pops up the moment we hit connect.
Right. Well, let's talk about LinkedIn, because right now we are having a ton of success on cold outreach on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Right. So what we've taught a lot of people to do is to not use their business as the first move. Right. Find something else as the first move. So a lot of people use Success Champion Networking as their first move. Right. So they may, be a CPA firm. They may be a legal firm. They may be whatever. What they're doing is saying, hey, first they'll identify their top 3 industries. And I think there's 3 industries people need to have at all times. They need to have the industry that refers them the most, then a secondary industry that they refer the most, and then a third industry that they wish would actually send them referrals. Okay. Identify those 3 particular industries. Once you have those industries, now you go to LinkedIn, you type in those industries wherever you want to be located, you find the person that's in that industry, and we'll just use SEN for the moment, and you say, hey, I'm a member of this networking organization. We are looking for, insert their industry. We're primarily B2B service-based business owners. Would you ever like to come visit our group? Right? It's a very simple reach out. My entire leadership team does 10 reach outs this way a day, which is part of the requirement of my leadership team. We are getting 1 out of 8 people joining the groups.
Nice.
10 reach out, because it's not a greaseball move. You're proactively telling them what you do. So for your listeners, the way they can do this is, if you're a part of an association, if you're a part of a group, you're a part of something that you belong to, use that as your first move. I sit with XYZ Association. Wasn't sure if that'd be something. We have an event coming up. Would you like to come as my guest to that event, or whatever? And now you're actually giving them an opportunity to start off a conversation. And the more people are doing this, the more that first outreach and that first move isn't the, hey, we're the greatest SEO company in the world. We can guarantee to get your shit to freaking, page 1, blah, blah, blah. And you get into some really cool conversations this way.
Staying on sales, how do you handle objections? What's your tips for handling objection or rejection?
Yeah. So objections only happen because you fucked up somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
Literally, you said something dumb. You said something that made them uncomfortable, right? Or you're trying to push a deal that shouldn't go through in the first place, right? That's the only time objections come up.
And let's face it. I mean, all right. So let me ask you, rather than me say it, why does that happen?
Because you're uncomfortable, you're nervous, you're scared, you're worried about what they're thinking. So the rejection pops in. It's so funny. It's like we walk through life with a whiteboard on our chest, and we hand it to everybody else and say, hey, would you write my worth on there for me? And right. So if we're not validated by the person we're sitting across from, then we struggle and we stumble. And as soon as we get to a place of our own head trash kicks in, that's when we do all the stupid things and say the dumb things, get pushy, become that greaseball and the likes. That's what makes them uncomfortable and starts throwing out all the objections and things at us.
Yeah. And I think people do a horrible, when you get a lot of objections, and if you're a salesperson that's not super successful, I always recalls it back to, they do a very bad job asking the right questions.
Yes.
And then you have the other segment of people that aren't successful that ask all the right questions, but they have no real deep level knowledge as to why they're asking them.
Yes.
And then how to use the information. And so it's like,
well, and then there's a third one. They even may know how to ask the questions. They just don't give a shit about what they're selling. So now you've got the trifecta, because if you're not passionate about what you sell, man, there's no amount of training, education alike that's going to fix that. So for people, and you said it, and I want to make sure they heard that, the greatest skill set of a salesperson, period, is the ability to ask the right questions. And people always ask me, like, well, what are the right questions? Well, I can't tell you for your industry, but I can tell you if you go get into 100, 500 freaking conversations, you're going to find all the right questions, because we go back to that repetition. You're going to find yourself in spots. You're going to find yourself in places where you have to learn to ask a question, because you're going to ask a question. They're going to respond in a negative manner. You better freaking file that away and go, okay, that wasn't the right way to ask a question. The next sales call, you may ask a question and they really lean into it, right? Okay, that's got to be filed away. That's a question I got to think about. When do I bring that up at the appropriate time? And it's that series of going through it that you figure it all out. I can't teach you a overall sales process. I can give you a framework for a sales process, but you got to go fuck it all up to be able to put that framework together and make it your own, or it's never going to work. People always go read the newest sales book and like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. Well, probably not. But if you use some of the principles in there with way you're already currently winning, now there's probably some good value there. But most people, they'll read a book or something and then change their entire playbook to fit somebody else's model, and it screws everything else up for them.
Yeah, when you ask the right questions and you understand at a deep level and you dig deeper, you don't settle at just the surface level questions. They answer, and then you're asking why it's important to them, and you keep digging a little bit deeper. You start getting a sense for their values, right? I mean, it's almost impossible if you've got the right product, a product that can truly help them. Once they've given you the information as to what they're trying to go towards or move away from, whatever it might be, and why those reasons are important to them, it's almost impossible in your test closing along the way to get objections. I mean, it just doesn't, it shouldn't happen. And so, I can tell you, when people first hear how we open this show, how to sell without being a greaseball, and I tell my back when I was doing the sales training, this is years ago, and it's going to sound wrong, so I'm going to quickly explain it. I want high pressure salespeople. So listen, I want high pressure salespeople. I say I will miss more deals by not being high pressure than I would. But here's what I mean by that. Because all these people that do nothing but teach these loudmouth crap on social, they're thinking, well, you're not intense enough. You're not asking for the deal enough. You're not teaching closes and all. Listen, I want high pressure salespeople, but I want the pressure coming from within the prospect. There's a difference between creating internal pressure and creating external pressure. External pressure is all these hard-armed tactics, the greaseball stuff that you're talking about. You can create a lot of internal pressure by asking the right question, doing such a good job asking the right questions, and then making sure that when you're presenting or explaining or educating on your product or service, you're showing how it addresses exactly what they want to go to or avoid, and then tying it back to what it really means for them. And when you do that, what's happening is there's an internal pressure where the buyer prospect, they're almost helping you close the deal.
So hold on. There's no such thing as closing the deal per se, right? When you try and think about closing the deal, everybody thinks of that hard, dirty, nasty stuff. There is absolutely closure, because the best close of all time is when the prospect will look at you and go, how do we get started? What's the next step here, right? And the way you do that, and this is a way I've been able to get people to really wrap their head around this, is you got to spend most of that call disqualifying them from being a good client. So what I want people to do is literally take down and make a list of everything somebody has to have the ability to have to say yes to you. So they got to be able to make a decision, right? They got to have a desire to use a product or service. They got to have a pain or a desire to have this problem fixed or to move some sort of technology or something forward, right? They've got to have money. They got to be able to spend that kind of money. And if you spend your entire conversation disqualifying them by asking them the right questions, that uncovers things. And it goes back to, you've got to know the things for them to say yes. So let's say, you got a prospect and you're doing a $150,000 deal, right? You got to know that they can spend $150,000. So to do that, you have to almost play a detective. You have to make some assumptions. So we'll just put it in small business world. So if you're in a small, tiny micro business, like solopreneur type thing, and somebody's trying to pitch you a $150,000 offer, if you're less than 1 year in business, you're not spending $150,000 on almost any solution unless you're a startup company that took on a big injection of cash, right? So you can make an assumption going into the call going, okay, this person's been a year in business. I can't make him a $150,000 offer. Do I have anything else that would make more sense to make that offer on? And you're going through this price, this deduction reasoning, if you will, of going, okay, this is one assumption. Let's go down that rabbit hole, prove that. Here's my next assumption. Let's go down that rabbit hole and prove that. And you get to a point that when you spend so much time disqualifying, if it's a right fit, they'll qualify themselves and ask, how the hell do we do more of this? And that's how everybody wins.
So you help business owners with their sales and scale up. So share a success story. Give me a success story of where you've went into a business, and help them take it to another level.
Yeah. So it was funny. It was a commercial heating and air conditioning company, good old boy, blue collar type company, did all commercial work. They had a 6-person sales team, and they had your traditional 2 top guys were crushing it, 4 bottom guys and 1 gal weren't crushing it. And when I pulled the 2 top guys aside, I said, all right, walk me through it, fellas. What's winning? What's awesome? How are you doing this? I then came into the 4 bottom people and I said, okay, why isn't this working? Why aren't you crushing? Why aren't you going for this? What's wrong? It all came down to one very simple thing for them. And it was they didn't actually have a sales culture that taught consistency to win. So all 6 of these salespeople relied 100% on marketing to bring their leads in. And if they got leads, they could actually do really well. The 2 guys that were so successful, they've been doing this shit for 15 years. There wasn't a question you could ask them that they didn't already have the answer to. The other 4 people were still learning all this stuff. So what we did is we taught them how to go hunt by doing these consistent reach outs and talking about these synergistic relationships. And actually their bottom tier person became their number 1 because he had this cool networking ability. He's just a beer drinking good dude. And he could go into these big companies that were doing commercial cleaning and commercial windows and fill these cool relationships. And this dude was networking his ass off and now was getting put on bids of these monstrous deals because they needed more people on the bid to win it for their commercial cleaning or the commercial windows. It was all a big package deal. And so a lot of times it's just going in and teaching the simple basics of sales, the simple basics of networking, and watching the whole culture shift to, all right, let's win. The other thing we did inside there is we got all their staff, doing the same thing. I asked they had, 150 or so staff. I asked them, I'm like, how many of you know what your little league kids coach does for a living? Like crickets. They're like, he's the coach. So we set them a task to start asking what all their coaches, what all their ancillary activities and things were doing for a living. Interesting thing is how many workers inside the company were now bringing back these introductions to the salespeople. One guy who was a baseball coach, ran this huge manufacturing company and just did the coaching for his kids, right? So there was just all these cool opportunities that popped up because we just asked the staff to go what you would do if you were networking and talk to people, and they were bringing back just these cool conversations. So it's just about shifting the entire culture.
I love that you brought up the home services vertical with HVAC. One of our big clients on the digital marketing side with J&L, Tom Drexler here in Louisville, they've grown from 3 million to 45 million top line revenue. Zero commercial. It's
Wow.
100% residential.
That's impressive.
It's incredible. And he's not the least expensive, but he focuses on service and support to the point where, it's no longer like the cable guy. Well, I'm going to show up between this hour and this hour. And even they have improved that now. They caught so much crap over the years. But, his level of service, the reoccurring revenue models with the member, everything he's just done. And you know what? He learned it all through mastermind groups. Yep. And of course, great marketing. But I will tell you, I was glad that you brought that up. I have a great friend, David Spizak, who says if you have 30 salespeople and you don't have a process, you have 30 processes.
Yes.
And and would you rather? Right. So when you said getting them all doing this similar type of process, you can manage one, you can't manage 30.
Correct. Well, and to his point, I love that, because if there is a consistent process within the company, the way to train, coach, and mentor is to the process. Now Correct. it's you can look at and go, okay, what stage of the sales, like somebody comes up with you with one of their clients and they say, hey, I'm struggling with XYZ. First question out of your mouth goes, all right, what stage of the process are we in? Where are we at? Right. And then you can look at over their overall numbers and see what stage they keep screwing up, what stage they keep missing at. And now you got to work on fixing that particular stage. The other thing that happens is now that everybody's selling to the same process, a lot of your top performers will give the tips and tricks that are working to them to the people that are on the up and coming. And now you create this cool culture of everybody working together. It's the only way to fly. And the quicker people can wrap their head around it, because dude, growing up in sales, nobody talked about sales process. I mean, hell, when I sold commercial printing, we had 14 different sales reps there, and I couldn't tell you what any one of them did. I couldn't even tell you what companies they were going after, because I was just going to beat them all. That's all I gave a shit about. And when you create the environment of dog eat dog, you just go eat. And that type of environment just destroys companies. Point of fact, that company actually went out of business after me and two other reps left.
Yeah. All right, let's shift gears to business development a little bit in the marketing side. So what do you say to those people, especially those early entrepreneurs where it might be them and maybe one or two other people? Sometimes it's just them solo, right? Where they're not great at self-promotion or selling themselves. What advice do you have for them?
I will say it in the Donnie way, and then I will nurture it. Get over it. Because here's the thing, right? People buy you, and then they get whatever you do. I mean, if you look at, we'll put it in big business. I mean, everybody's seen it. A sales rep leaves a company, even with non-competes and everything else, all those clients follow the salesperson. Why? Because that's who's got the damn relationship. That's who there's connected to. People buy you, and then they get what they do. So if you're not putting yourself out there, if you're not selling yourself and telling people about you, and the easiest way to do this is social media has made this game so stupid simple. I'll tell everybody, take every story that you have in your company, good, bad, and ugly. Take every story that's happened to you in life, good, bad, or ugly, and write that story down on a list. Come up as many as you possible. Then write, what was my biggest life lesson from that moment? Take that shit to social media and teach others.
Yeah.
Right?
Great
teach
point.
others how to do what you do. Yeah. Like if I earn an SEO.
What you do well.
Yeah. What you do well. Yes, I agree. Right. But if you run an SEO company, get out and start teaching SEO. If you run a marketing company, get out and teach marketing. If you are building a new AI company, teach them how to use the AI. I mean, it's the people that win are the ones that are willing to give their knowledge away. And people, I get so much hate on this when I say this. We're like, but that's the secret sauce. That's what makes me unique. Look, nothing makes you unique other than you. right? That's the only thing. People are only going to get one version of you. So be out front, teach, give it all away, and see what happens.
So I'm going to ask you something. And a lot of business leaders, I used to say I was shocked by how many business leaders struggle with this question, but I'm no longer shocked because even when I tried to do it for myself, uh, I can remember back. I'm a big student, or was a big student back, when I was leveling up with Jay Abraham
Mm-hmm.
and creating that unique value proposition, that compelling value proposition. Share some tips on how to improve or to create a compelling value proposition that'll really resonate with a potential client.
So for me, we'll kick it over to vision a little bit, because I think that what people don't understand is they've got to buy what you're actually into. So one of the things that we said when we launched Success Champion Networking is we were going to change how the world networks by fixing what everybody hates about networking. All the shit that they don't like, we were going to fix. As soon as we said we were going to change the world, man, the world started leaning in because they wanted to be part of that movement. So what we found for most people is you've got to have a statement that, one, inspires and scares the shit out of you a little bit. Two, when others hear it, they got to want to lean into it and be a part of it. So whatever it is you're doing, I want you to ask yourself, does that vision overall inspire you? Does that force other people to lean into you? Is it something you actually want to accomplish? I don't focus a whole lot on value propositions. I like the story side of things, of getting people to buy into my overall vision, and that gets them to lean into. People have called that a value proposition, blah, blah, blah. But I really think
but what you could do is take that story and say, okay, what's the value proposition out of it?
For sure.
Right?
For sure. For sure.
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
not necessarily saying that's exactly, I'm going to communicate this one sentence, or I don't even think a value proposition necessarily is an elevator pitch. It could be just like, what is it that makes us better or unique?
Right.
It might take a story to communicate it.
For sure. For sure. And, it's like for us, I mean, when we launched Success Champions Networking, it was out of more necessity for other people, right? It wasn't even our primary line of business for 2 years. We just had a certain set of, we felt like Liam Neeson. We had a skill and we knew how to use it. So we deployed it, and we were able to help a lot of businesses through the pandemic, because we launched it in March of 20. And so we helped a lot of businesses stay in business during that point. And that became the overall movement, and other people want to be a part of it. And that's what allowed us to scale and grow so fast. So you just got to get people to lean in and buy into your world.
What's your philosophy on sales follow-up?
So I drive people nuts with this. I suck at follow-up. Personally, absolutely suck at follow-up. So I try and do everything for it's a one-call close. Let me get in the conversation and get out, because I suck. However, even though I say that, you will lose if you don't follow up.
That's right.
Right? There's just so much business. Even when we implemented this 10 reach outs on LinkedIn, dude, I can tell you, just by going back one time and saying, hey, wanted to make sure you got this. Does it make sense to come attend? The re-engagement rate is insane.
So I will say this. I'm going to clarify what you just said. My guess is you do not suck at follow-up, but you're like most business owners that get pulled in a lot of different directions. So you get distracted, and your attention to detail on certain things might not be there. But in the actual, when you are following up, you're probably very good in that moment.
For sure. And I would agree with you. It's the volume of activity, right?
I'm the same way. I'm like, man, it's easy for me to forget. Oh yeah. And listen, I know I can write down, but my attention to detail is not the greatest.
Right. Yeah, no, same. And so what I've discovered, and this is what our whole team does, is your business development is the first thing that gets done in the day. Because if you get your business development done first thing, then the shitstorm of the day can happen and it doesn't matter. Right. So I'll get up, and we'll do my social media post, which is part of my overall business development strategy. and then I'll do my reach outs, and then the meetings and things can start. Because you know what happens once a day starts, man, you're done. You're not getting back to the sales. You're not getting back to the business development. You might do some pop shot stuff here and there, but it's a get it done every day mentality.
All right. So one final thing here. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to a small business owner who's starting to focus more, or realizes, hey, I've got to pay more attention to sales or business development? What would that be?
It's really, really simple, and it's going to be a curveball answer. Get to the point where you no longer have any excuses. See, as an employee, we can have excuses. We can, if sales are bad, we can say the marketing sucks, the economy sucks, leads suck, social media is wasteland right now. We can come up with all these excuses. And as an employee, those are legitimate excuses. But if you run the company, there's no excuses left. If sales suck, go sell more. If marketing sucks, go fix the marketing. If you can't blame the economy, you just got to get after it. Create a rhythm, create a process, create a system that you can duplicate over and over and over again, and make your sales a math equation. If you can get your sales ultimately to a math equation, then it gets really, really simple to figure out how to scale the business. But most people, they don't want to do the dirty stuff. They don't want to do the outreaches. They don't want to do the networking. They don't want to do the cold calls, right? They don't want to do all. That's where the magic happens. Go back to the blocking and tagging.
I feel like, gosh, every generation's got its own advantages and disadvantages, doesn't it? It's a great way to end it, because I can listen. When I first started off, there was no internet. We had to learn on the fly what somebody liked and their interest and all this other stuff. We had to pick up the phone and
social media. I would have loved to have been young and coming up through the ranks with social media. It would have been
as long as you knew what you currently know. Yes.
Yes.
In other words,
yes. Take this knowledge back with me. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
For sure.
Yeah. I also think, man, if I had to start over knowing what I know now and have the old habits of some of those things and incorporated in, of course, that's our job, right? That our job is to teach and educate this generation. Listen, if you're able to take some of this and work it into the advantages and some of the stuff that, quite honestly, you're better at than I am.
Right.
I can tell you there's not a person out on our sales floor that's not better at social than I am. In terms of how it is, they may not know how to network and prospect with it the same way.
Right.
But they're pretty good with that. So But man, you still got to pick up the phone.
Yeah, for sure. And here's the thing. Nobody's going to do it for you, right? Nobody's going to do all the hard work for you. I mean, there's a portion of all of us that looks for the easy route. We all look for the easy button at some point. We could go on to 100 different directions with that, but don't wish it was easy. Wish you were better at your own process. Wish you would do the things that actually move the needle and move your business forward. And if you don't know the things that would move your business forward, then you're not getting punched in the face enough by having a bunch of bad conversations to figure out how to have the good conversations. Go get in the game and watch what happens. It's literally, you've got to build the process by going through the process and putting it all together.
Yep. And we'll close it with that. That's a wrap on another episode of Move, Crush, Count, where we dived into the secrets of selling with integrity for business growth. Incredible guest today, Donnie.
Thanks, brother.
Donnie Boivin. I want everyone to, we've got his website scrolling at the bottom. If you're watching, if you're listening, it's Donnie, DONNIE, Boivin, BOIVIN.com. So DonnieBoivin.com. Visit him. Anything exciting on that site they'll see when they get there?
Oh yeah, great pictures of me. But guys, do me one better. If you got any, you're still listening to us, and you got any value out of this, do Scott the favor and share this out with one person. Right? Growing your own show, I can tell you, having an audience is a bear to grow your own audience. So share this out with one person who needs to hear it. Any of his other episodes, do the same. It'll mean everything to him.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Wise words. In fact, when I'm a guest on other people's show, I'm going to do the same. I appreciate you saying that.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right. Audience, MCC Nation, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you check out movecrushcount.com. So that way you can catch up on all past episodes and you never miss a future one. So make sure you subscribe. And don't forget, we've been streaming live a lot lately. Check us out and make sure you catch these live streams on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Stay connected with the community. Special thanks to our sponsor, J&L Marketing, for their continued support and helping you outsmart your competition so you don't have to outspend them. That's all for this episode. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.